Welcome back to Hearts on the Frontier, the channel that rides deep into the forgotten corners of history, where truth is stranger than any legend the West ever whispered. Today, we saddle up for a journey through 25 bizarre things from the Old West that you have never seen before, oddities so unusual they will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about frontier life. So tighten your cinch, mount up, and let us ride straight into the strangest side of the Wild West. The Old West is almost always shown as dusty saloons, outlaws with squinting eyes, sheriffs with shiny badges, and cattle drives stretching over sunburned plains. But behind those famous images existed a world far stranger, filled with curious inventions, dangerous traditions, and unbelievable habits that people of the frontier accepted as normal. Some will make you laugh, some will make you cringe, and others will make you wonder how anyone survived long enough to shape the American West at all. Let us begin our strange ride with one of the oddest inventions ever seen on the prairie. Traveling salesmen often roamed town to town selling so-called improvements for everyday life. One salesman became famous for selling portable wooden bathtubs that folded like suitcases. Imagine a rugged cowboy stepping inside a wooden box that barely fit his legs while praying it did not collapse. People on the frontier cared about staying clean, but not enough to build a real bathroom. Folding bathtubs were the compromise, except water had to be heated over a fire and carried bucket by bucket. Most people used them once, declared them a nightmare, and dragged them to a shed where they stayed forever. Now if you think the bathtub was strange, wait until you hear what cowboys used as hair gel. Buffalo tallow, the thick fat scraped from bison ribs, was melted and smeared onto the hair for shine and hold. On hot days it would melt and drip down the forehead. On cold mornings it froze into place. Cowboys joked that if a coyote ever chased you, the smell from your hair alone was enough to give you away. But in a world without fancy grooming products, the prairie offered its own version of styling cream, whether you liked it or not. Another bizarre habit came from old frontier medicine. Doctors were rare, so people used anything they believed might help. Gunpowder was mixed with whiskey and swallowed to treat fever. A toothache might be cured with clove oil, or if that failed, someone would simply pull the tooth out with pliers designed for horses. Some women carried rattlesnake rattles as charms to protect newborns. And cowboys believed sleeping with onions in their boots kept scorpions away. Much of it did not work, but on the frontier superstition was sometimes all people had. The West was also filled with strange businesses. One of the strangest was the rental wife service. Men who were traveling for months at a time hired women to cook meals, clean clothes, and manage camp chores. These arrangements were not romantic and were often signed with contracts listing specific tasks and payment rates. Some lasted a week, others lasted months. It was practical, awkward, and extremely common among miners, trail riders, and drifters. Speaking of awkward, another strange item was the coffin torpedo. Yes, a real booby trap for graves. Grave robbing was such a problem that inventors created spring-loaded devices that exploded when a coffin was opened. One misstep from a would-be thief meant broken fingers or in some cases, serious injury. Grave robbers feared them so much that many stopped digging altogether. Families loved them. Doctors hated them because they sometimes wanted bodies for medical study. Either way, it was one of the most bizarre defenses ever created. Moving away from cemeteries, let us head into the saloons, where one unusual rule took many strangers by surprise. Some frontiers towns banned mirrors. Not because mirrors were rare, but because violent cowboys often smashed them during fights. Mirrors were expensive, so saloon owners placed signs warning customers they would be charged if a mirror broke. Some saloons replaced mirrors with polished metal sheets that distorted reflections like funhouse glass. Imagine brushing your beard in a mirror that made you look like a wiggly ghost. Speaking of saloons, one of the weirdest drinks ever served was called Snakebite Surprise. It was a shot of whiskey with a dead rattlesnake rattle floating inside. Some saloons swore it cured illness. Others believed it gave you courage. Most people drank it just to show off, usually while gagging afterward. One bar in Texas said anyone who swallowed the rattle without choking drank for free the rest of the night, but no one wanted to test the rule. Another bizarre sight came from fashion. Cowboy boots were sometimes made from the hides of animals you might not expect: elephant, stingray, and even lizard. But the most shocking were boots made from buffalo testicle leather. Yes, that was real. They were surprisingly durable, extremely smooth, and considered a luxury. Cowboys bragged about them loudly until women covered their ears in disgust. Even today collectors hunt for surviving pairs. Out on the frontier, newspapers played an important role. But did you know people sometimes used newspapers as wallpaper? Homes were drafty, cold, and poorly built, so families pasted newspapers on their walls for insulation. Visitors often walked in and immediately started reading yesterday's news from the living room. Some homes even collected newspaper wallpaper for years, layer after layer, like a time capsule of old headlines. If you prefer something stranger, consider the cowboy toothbrush. Before bristles and plastic handles existed, people cleaned their teeth using burnt twigs, chewed sagebrush stems, or actual pieces of charcoal rubbed directly onto the teeth. It was messy, black dust covered everything, but surprisingly effective. Some cowboys bragged they had never seen a dentist in their life, though considering frontier dentists pulled teeth with pliers, maybe that was a good thing. Another strange tradition was the phantom rider ceremony. When a cowboy died on the trail, his horse was sometimes saddled for one final ride with boots placed backward in the stirrups. The horse walked riderless beside the herd as the drovers sang mournful songs. It was haunting and symbolic, a way of showing that the cowboy's journey had ended. Travelers who saw it from a distance swore it looked like a ghost wandering the plains. One of the strangest forms of entertainment was the flea circus. Traveling performers trained fleas to pull tiny wagons, dance on miniature stages, and even perform acrobatics. People paid coins to watch, though many wondered whether they were really watching fleas at all. Trick or not, the flea circus delighted lonely frontier towns and became a popular attraction at fairs. Now let us talk about food, because frontier diets included some truly bizarre dishes. One of the strangest was called son of a gun stew. It contained every part of a calf, including the heart, liver, brain, stomach, and sometimes testicles. Cowboys swore it gave them strength for long rides. Others refused to eat it after hearing what was inside. Another frontier delicacy was dried grasshopper cakes. When food was scarce, pioneers ground roasted grasshoppers into flour and mixed them into patties. It sounds awful today, but many said it tasted like nutty crackers. Another curious custom was found in railroad towns. People tried to predict weather using the behavior of pigs. If pigs rolled in mud early in the morning, rain was expected. If they squealed loudly at sunset, people believed a storm was coming. These predictions were often wrong, but frontier towns trusted them more than official weather reports. Speaking of animals, one of the strangest cowboy jobs was the prairie dog census. Ranchers paid workers to count the prairie dog holes on their land so they could estimate how many cattle the land could support. Too many holes meant broken legs for horses and cattle, so census workers walked for miles recording each mound. It was boring, necessary, and not something you would expect from the Wild West. Moving on, let us explore another bizarre invention, the horse gas mask. During prairie fires or dust storms, some ranchers used cloth bags soaked in water and tied them over the noses of horses so they could breathe through the wet fabric. Some horses hated them, some tolerated them, but they often helped animals survive harsh conditions. The masks looked ridiculous, but they were part of frontier life. Another oddity came from early photography. Some photographers believed ghosts could be captured on camera. They created double-exposed photographs showing faint figures lingering behind living people. Many customers believed these were real spirits and paid extra for ghost photographs. Towns with few entertainment options loved them, and some families hung ghost photos on their walls like treasured memories. Now let us revisit the saloons, where a bizarre gambling game became popular. It was called shooting the rat. A real rat was released inside the bar, and cowboys bet money on who could shoot it first. Rats ran under tables, drinks spilled everywhere, and customers dove for cover. Some towns outlawed it after someone shot a hole in the saloon floor large enough for a calf to fall through. Another strange job was the professional mourner. Some families hired people to cry loudly at funerals so the community would think the deceased was well loved. The mourners arrived weeping, wailing, and sometimes fainting on purpose. It was dramatic, emotional, and completely fake, but families believed it honored the dead. Next on our list is the punishment called the mule walk. When a man committed a crime too small for jail but too serious for a warning, he was forced to walk barefoot behind a mule across rocky ground for miles. If the mule kicked dirt in his face or dragged him through cactus, that was part of the punishment. Most men behaved better afterward. Another odd frontier custom was the silent dance. Some towns banned loud music after dark, so dancers attended parties where fiddlers moved their bows without touching the strings. Couples danced in silence while imagining the tune in their heads. Outsiders who peeked through windows thought the dancers had lost their minds. Finally, we come to one of the most bizarre sights ever seen on the frontier. Some cowboys believed a rattlesnake could not strike if you sang to it. They walked slowly forward, singing lullabies, while trying to pick up the snake by its tail. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it did not. More than one cowboy learned the hard way that rattlesnakes do not appreciate music. The Old West was not just a land of guns, gold, and cattle. It was a world of strangeness, creativity, desperation, superstition, and humor. People survived with whatever they had, inventing their own solutions no matter how bizarre they seemed. These 25 oddities remind us that history is never simple and the frontier was much stranger than the movies ever show. If you enjoyed our ride through the weirdest corners of the Old West, saddle up with us again next time as Hearts on the Frontier continues uncovering the stories left behind by dust, shadow, and legend. Until then, keep your boots steady, your spirit wild, and your heart always on the frontier.